Call in, of course I don't call in that often, but when I call in, or any veteran, when we call in, they start asking me questions about the information they've spent 20 years gathering on me. You would think that IT's best ability in anyone's system, pull up what you already know about me, so you only have to ask a very few questions to fill in the blanks. I don't know if I'm articulating this well or not.
Well, I happen to think you are. And if you look at two of these initiatives, to give you a sense of what it feels like to live in an organization where we actually get top-down guidance, rather than people screaming, complaining about its absence. We're getting top-down guidance, right? This 13 things is the top-down guidance we're getting. Everybody in the department is focused on doing these 13 things. Everybody, before they do anything else. Now, the good news is that's created a lot of focus. If you'll notice, to your point, first and foremost, number 6, that is the VA's version of customer relationship management. We just took the C and replaced it with a V.
Yeah, when I try to, I've only tried it a couple of times, but when I try to do something, a person asks me a bunch of questions, bounce me to the next. A person, when I try to interact, and this is true in other agencies as well, NASA has our own problems, but the first person I talk to asks a bunch of questions, then they hot swap me to someone else who then asks me the same questions.
I understand that. That's because today, not only today do we have no CRM capability in place. Prior to this administration, no one at the VA was perceptive enough to even recognize that CRM was missing. So now with this administration, both things have happened. They've recognized very early that CRM means something, whatever channel a veteran uses. Well, the veteran should wind up with consistent information linked to that's unique identity for that veteran. Well, for this to happen, though, this administration had to create a cross-administration culture where VRM is not a VHA initiative, it's not a VBA initiative, it's not a cemeteries initiative, it's certainly not a comptroller initiative, right? It is now a VA initiative. So with respect to creating the organizational structure, the executive program management office, the data structures, et cetera, really, from a VA perspective, the only piece of VA that is well suited to do this is OINT, because we are the single IT authority, right? There is no single authority anywhere else other than the secretary. So on the business sponsor side, this is creating great consternation to figure out how we're going to get all the business sponsors together so we don't have 3 different inputs coming to us. We need a single business sponsor out there. So we're working through all that, right? But already you can tell from this and from your comments, the business sponsor can't be the Undersecretary for Health, too narrow. Business sponsor can't be the Undersecretary for Benefits, too narrow. Business sponsor can't be the National Cemeteries Administration, way too narrow, right? So it's got to be some business sponsor on top of all those, which is what we're going through right now to figure out how that's going to be created. And then from that, all this other stuff. Here, let's go back here now. And I'll show you how we're doing this and use your question. Okay. Skip that. Let's skip that. There. So, just using some framework, and you all are probably, again, much more expert at different frameworks than I am, but this happens to be the FEA framework. But anyway, if you see that yellow line, that gold line that goes from top to the bottom, there are really 13 of those that transit this pyramid now from top to bottom, right? And I just showed you the list with up there at the top where it says 300 exhibit, you would have those 13 names that I just gave you, right? So what this says is to solve your problem that you just described, that you and every other veteran out there has, we now have been told by the Secretary to identify every implication of that major initiative, right? This is coming from our 10th floor, from the Secretary. Every policy that either supports or detracts from this, every process that supports or detracts from this, what investments we're making that support or detract from this. Certainly by the time you get down, well, when you get down to data, what are those attributes that we will have across, we will agree upon across the VA that will be used to describe a veteran? What are the applications, the array or the architecture of applications that will either support or detract from this? Identity management as a service, right? What are the applications that need to consume an identity management service so we uniquely identify a veteran across all of the VA, and any point of contact that a veteran has will result in a coherent answer consistent with a contact they just made the day before. How many, it's all the way down to infrastructure, by the way, so that any of you in the audience with respect to solution architecture who are devotees of lifecycle management and total cost of ownership, this should give us essentially direct line of sight connection down to how many boxes, how many wires, how much bandwidth, how much I/O, how much RAM, you name it, do we need to buy ultimately to support the transaction volume, the growth in data storage over time, the transmission requirements to meet, you name the initiative, in this case VRM. So that's the approach we're trying to take to this, and again, our environment, I think, is right for this based on what the top-down guidance we're getting from the current administration, the single IT authority, single IT appropriation, a lot of fuzziness in the business layer there that we're still working through, but nonetheless we're sort of sandwiching them in the middle, right, with coherent guidance from the top and a single IT authority at the bottom. We're forcing the business community to come to grips with the fact that they have to unify as well around certain things. I mean, clearly in the benefits area they don't have to worry about auscultation of the heart. I mean, it's not that they have to standardize everything, but we're certainly getting to the point where they recognize that they have to standardize some things. Now there's more good news in this, and it's at the data layer. And remember all those check marks with collaboration, check marks I showed you before, and the last one being collaboration, and I went through a little soliloquy there about how we do collaboration. So another example of that is data governance. About, well, with the T21 work group, we came to recognize that there was no capability in the VA to identify single authoritative sources of data. You name it, whatever it is, the identity of the veteran, or how many gas masks we own, or the status of health of our buildings. I mean, whatever this, any of that. So we went ahead and proposed to the Deputy Secretary and the Undersecretaries that we establish a VA-wide corporate data governance mechanism for the VA. Well, that recommendation was accepted. The Office of Planning and Policy was named the business sponsor, so we in OI&T recommended that the sponsor for data governance be outside of OI&T, which the Deputy Secretary agreed with, so hence the Assistant Secretary for Policy and Plans was named that because they have a certain business intelligence role and whatnot. But anyway, they got that. And but with respect to collaboration, VHA, VBA, cemeteries, the comptroller, the HR people all came together and said, gee whiz, you know, we really need this. Well, and so one of the examples, for example, NCA puts on the table when we're having lockdowns, by the way, got them all together in the way I just described to you. Cemeteries puts on the table that says, you know, by the way, we have no official data source for a date of death of a veteran. So everybody's looking around saying, well, when exactly did a veteran die? Well, you know, they died in the hospital as a VHA death. They buried him. That's a different day. There is no date of death source. So anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So they all agreed to it. So we go ahead and present this thing to the Deputy Secretary. So just as an example of where we are with collaboration in the VA, something I think is a very complicated problem, right? The data governance. And you're thinking, you know, I'm thinking any relationship diagrams, and how in the hell am I going to explain this to these people? And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be... Anyway, so, but again, this was after 3 or 4 lockdowns on the subject, so I get up there and I go through this briefing, you know, a lot of hand waving, as you see I do, and